Hello and welcome to part 3 of Agnès Forever. So I should explain here just one final time, and then the housekeeping is done and we can just move on with this series. So in 2018, 2019, I did two videos called Agnès Vardathon Part 1 and Part 2. This was going to be Agnès Vardathon Part 3 until I got to the first program of this box set, the complete films of Agnès Varda from the Criterion Collection, 15 discs and 15 programs, and the first program was called Agnès Forever, and it just really struck me like, I like that, I really like that, I'm going to steal it, you know. So this is now Agnès Forever, and it's part 3, and this is where the series fully settles into some kind of goal, and not so much schedule, but mission statement. I'm going to watch and talk about all of Agnès Varda's films, and I couldn't be more excited to do it. Initially, I was just going to do the Artificial Eye box set, which is about 8 films and a number of shorts. Now the Criterion box set is out. Screw it. Let's just go all in and talk about everything that is presented. Excuse me, I'll leave that in for free. Everything that is presented in this box set. From the extras to the films and everything else in between. So what I'm going to do in this video is talk about the first disc. Now I wanted to say that I was considering working through this box set in a chronological form. So there is a section in the booklet that is a guide to her filmography in chronological fashion. So I could just refer to the book and which disc I need to get to follow her entire career like that. But I think that I might just go with the curated order that is presented in the box set. So we have 15 programs. The first one is Agnès Forever, which includes her final film, Varda by Agnès from 2019, and the short film that she made in 2015 called The Three Buttons. So this is kind of like, you know, the last two works that she created before she passed away in 2019 at the age of 90 years old. And from there, we then move to early Varda, like her very first 3 films from the 50s. And then it jumps about a bit. We go to Around Paris, which is films that she made in Paris, obviously. Rue Daguerre, which is the street that she lived on for like the last 50 plus years of her life. And there are 2 films that she made around that street, and it kind of appears in her other films as well. Then there's Married Life, so films that she made about kind of married couples. From there, we move to the 6th program, which is in California, which is 5 films that she made in California. A little bit controversy about this disc because 5 films are put onto one Blu-ray, and there's apparently quite a bit of compression, and it doesn't have anywhere near the bitrate of the other discs in the set, which is a real shame. Her Body Herself, which is kind of her like feminist films that are really focused on women and their kind of choices. And then we have No Shelter, which is her film Vagabond, her masterpiece from 1985, and there's another short film that she made that year as well. There is the inevitable Jane B disc, which is the 2 films she made with Jane Birkin in 1988. And then we have Jacques Demy, which was another inevitable program. Her late husband, who she made a movie about, two movies about actually. Simon Cinema, which is a film that she made in the 90s, which is actually her last film shot on 35mm and was kind of a bomb. And then we have The Gleaners, which is the 2 films she made about gleaning in the early 2000s when she moved to digital filmmaking. There's Visual Artist, which are films that kind of focus on the visual art that she made, and that goes from like the 60s, 80s, 2004, and 2017's Faces Places. Then we have Here and There, which is a television series that she made traveling around France, which has been included, which is fantastic. And then finally at the end we have The Beaches of Agnès. So 15 programs, and I think I'm just going to work my way through them. And so in this one we're going to be talking about Agnès Forever, the first program. Now what I thought I'd do is make separate videos on each of the films. There's just there's honestly so much to talk about, and I have so many thoughts. So what I'm going to do is in this video I'm going to talk about the supplements that are included in the first disc of the box set. And what I'm going to do is refer to the booklet for just to jog my memory for the stuff that I've watched. And I will be watching all the extras and talking about them. So if I flick through here, I should get to the guide to the supplements. So what we have on the first disc is A Chat with Nini, which is a 2019 short very, very short, with Agnès talking to her cat, which is, again, it's a fluff piece. To me, as a cat lover, I really enjoyed it. It's just her like sat by a windowsill talking to her cat about talking, and the cat just kind of just jumps off in a very typical cat fashion. So it's in some ways it's a completely worthless extra to have. But as Agnès says in the main feature on disc one, nothing is banal, depending on how you film it, I think is what she said. So yeah, maybe not worthless, maybe not banal, but I'm glad they included it. Then there's a new series of interviews presented in one featurette with Agnès' children, Rosalie Varda and Mathieu Demy. There's a Telluride Film Festival panel from 2019, which was introducing the film Varda by Agnès, her final film, featuring Mathieu Demy, Rosalie Varda, filmmaker Martin Scorsese, and festival co-director Tom Luddy. Then there's a 2019 video essay about Agnès' credit sequences, so the opening and closing credit sequences from throughout her film. Sensing Bodies, a 2019 video essay about the ways that Agnès photographed the human body. And then finally, there are trailers for the film Varda by Agnès, and then also the Janus Films 2019 Varda retrospective. So the first disc is pretty packed with special features. So the interview with her children, which was conducted in 2020 for the Criterion Collection, Rosalie Varda speaks in French and Mathieu Demy speaks in English. I loved this feature. Holy shit. Like this was a really moving piece. It's about 20 minutes long, something like that. And they reflect on not so much, I mean, they talk about their mother, obviously, that's what this whole thing is about, but then they mainly go through kind of their chronological history with working with their mother. Mathieu, he, as a young boy, was in her film Documentaire, and then in Kung Fu Master, so he kind of grew up being a performer in her films, and then later on as well. Rosalie was more involved in kind of, I think, it was costume designing and also producing her films. She also appeared in Agnès' films, but she was more in the behind-the-scenes stuff. And I believe she heads up the production company that Agnès had that kind of, was the output of her movies, Cine Tamaris, I believe. So Rosalie seems to be more of like the keeper of the keys to the Agnès Varda estate at this point. And Mathieu went off and kind of became an actor and a director in his own right. And they talk about, that just growing up with their mother and memories of things like that. The Rosalie segments were a bit more moving because you can tell her getting emotionally choked up, kind of talking about her mother. She'd only just passed away in the previous year. And that's when she's discussing the final film, Varda by Agnès, and that she was telling her mother that, maybe you should make this final film because when you die and time is running out. So obviously they were aware that she had this terminal illness. And she was saying that, people are going to make films about you. Why don't you make that film? Why don't you have that kind of the last say in kind of, the way people look at your films? Not in the sense of like being, totalitarian and like, oh, okay, this is how you should view everything. But, why don't you kind of step in, so to speak, at the last hour and kind of say what you want to say about your movies and the way that you view your career and your art and everything. And she said that it was a race to finish that film. But they managed to, and I believe that that film Varda by Agnès was premiered at the Berlin Film Festival, I think a matter of months before Agnès passed away. So it was really under the wire, I guess, to finish it. And I was really intrigued about that when I first heard about the film, which I'll talk about more in the next video where I review the film Varda by Agnès. But yeah, just hearing them talk about their mother with such love and respect, it was really touching and really entertaining in terms of seeing the clips used. And there's some clips from a film that Mathieu made where he kind of made a quasi-sequel to Documentaire in terms of revisiting a location, and his character is kind of the young boy that he played in his mother's film many years before. I looked that up and apparently it's had really bad reviews, but I'm kind of intrigued to see it now all the same. So to get their input, to have her children appear on this box set in a documentary featurette was invaluable. Clearly they must have collaborated with Criterion in terms of putting this release together, and it would have felt incomplete to me if they hadn't appeared on the supplements in some way, shape, or form, because it's there's a lot to hear, and I almost feel like it was too short. I feel like There's so much more we could have heard from them. But, I really enjoyed it. It was a really great special feature. And the next one is almost even better, and it's the 40-minute Telluride Film Festival panel, where we have a moderator introducing, Agnés's children, and then also, and I keep saying Agnés's children. I mean, they're both fully grown and, quite adult at this point, but regardless, Martin Scorsese, who was a friend and fan of Agnès, and then Tom Luddy, who had worked with Agnès when she came to California in the 60s, I believe. So the panel doesn't really feature Rosalie and Mathieu all that much, because they very briefly talk about, their different frames of reference for being in films and helping their mother make films and things like that. So you don't really hear much from them, unfortunately, but I can tell Rosalie was kind of like maybe not as confident in her English as her brother, but she was also very keen to, like, Marty will be much better at me than talking about, my mother's films and stuff. So they hand over to Scorsese, and he just holds court for like 20 minutes, it feels like, and he tells these stories, and he meanders a little bit, and you can tell that he's getting on in age too, and he references that. But there's some wonderful stories from Scorsese, some that I almost don't want to spoil, but I also feel like I need to talk about them. And there's this, and I feel like I'm going to say this way too much in this whole series, but there's a beautiful moment where Scorsese talks about the last time Agnès visited his house. And he said that, she was visiting the house, and he talks about how he was always seeking her approval. He always wanted Agnés's approval, and he found himself lucky that she was someone who wanted to come and see him and kind of, talk with him. He seemed to find it an honor that she wanted to be his friend in a way, which is really sweet. But he said that the last time she visited him at his house, they were both kind of trading stories of their various ailments and how they both had eye problems at the time and stuff. And he was talking to her, and she said that, and this was near the last few years of her life, and she was saying that my memories are leaving me. I'm losing my memories. And she said, but it's okay. They're like butterflies flying away, and I feel lighter now. And I mean, I'm almost like welled up when I was hearing that. And then a few minutes later was where it gets really interesting. A butterfly floats past Scorsese's head in the screening room.
Somehow a combination of
and hey, maybe it was a moth. I couldn't really tell if it was a butterfly or not, but I was just like, it caught my breath. I was like, oh. And you kind of immediately go to that kind of poetic notion that the butterfly was Agnès and she was there, and deep down my belief system doesn't, or my lack of belief system doesn't accommodate that as an idea, but I like the poetic idea of it. And a couple more times throughout the talk, you see the butterfly fly around, and they even acknowledge it, like, oh, there's a thing. But it just, I can believe it. Like, he told this beautiful story about, that my memories are leaving me like butterflies, but it's okay, I feel lighter. And then you just see a butterfly a couple minutes later float past his head. It was like, oh my God. And one thing that I really was taken with during the conversation with Scorsese was the way that the camera was set up. There's a number of cameras set up to film them on stage, and there's a close-up from Scorsese's right side, and you see just beyond him Mathieu Demy, and it's just so fun just to watch his reactions to what Scorsese is saying, like the slow nods of approval and the smiles when the stories are coming out and stuff. And I don't know, that was like an extra nice part of it, that I got to see his reaction to what Scorsese was saying about his mother. So that was like an extra kind of enjoyable part of the whole talk for me. Another story that was great, he said that she visited him while he was making The Irishman. And he was stressing over the fact that the scene he was shooting wasn't like impressive enough for her, like, oh man, I should have been doing something like, cooler to impress Agnès. And she met him in the trailer, and she's like, how long's the script? And Martin Scorsese was saying, it's like 180 pages, and she's like, oh, you can't keep doing this. And he said that she would scold him and stuff, and say that, no, you're too old to be doing something like this, and it's too long and all that kind of stuff. And another story where she turned up to the after party for The Wolf of Wall Street, and he said that she never told me what she thought about the film, implying that she didn't like it very much. But she turned up to the party with this scarf that had $100 bills kind of sewn into them, which is kind of like kind of like this joke that she kind of made, and they were like laughing about it on stage, which was really fun. But yeah, Scorsese talking about her, and I love the things where he talked about We talk about Agnès' filmography, and it's like, is it, is this film fiction? Is this one documentary? Is it a mix of both? He's like, it doesn't matter. It's all cinema. And then he says something to the effect of, Agnès is art. That is just who she is. She embodies it. And the distinction of is this documentary or not doesn't matter. It's all cinema. And he also this is a really interesting telling thing. He talks about how it's great for people to just see her films, and he's like, yeah, I champion celluloid, and film is like, that's that to me is film and everything, and film preservation and seeing films in the cinema. But he's like, at the end of the day, you just need to see the films. Just seeing the films is the most important thing. And that's something that I think some people who get really purist about things, they lose sight of that. Now, I'll tie in there to something that has been a controversy with this box set, which has been the restorations on many of these films, particularly the older ones, have been given a yellow tint by the company that has restored them, which took place many years ago, I think maybe in the mid 2010s. So it isn't like really recent restorations, but like, a few years ago. And the Criterion forums and stuff, they've been so mad, and they're saying this is like an abortion of a release. And well, they didn't say that, but you almost feel like it. That people are so like, I can't believe this is so disappointing. Like, I can't believe they've ruined this. Like, it's some of the worst transfers I've ever seen. Now, granted, I haven't seen them all yet, but I do think that we just need to sometimes take a step back and realize that, this is like a small box set. I mean, it's a big box set compared to a normal Blu-ray, but don't get me wrong, but it's a fairly small package that contains, in these pages, every film she ever made, right? From 1955 to 2019. So that's what, 65, 75, 85, 95, 75. It's over 50 years, right? No, over 60 years, right? 65, 75, 85, 95, 2005, 2015, yes. 64 years of movies inside this collection. Yeah, maybe some of them don't look as great as they could. Maybe some of them could be restored even better. Maybe some of them don't have the most pure color timing, and there's a bit of a yellow tint on them, unfortunately. Yeah, it sucks. Believe me, again, I kind of almost criticize people for being purist, but I'm a purist. I want to see things in the way that they were intended, but we don't know if that is the intention, and the way that, Rosalie Varda is overseeing everything. And at the time of the restorations, you would assume that Agnès would be involved. It's not like her films are like these big, hot commodities in the film world. So, Agnès must have been involved. And so surely she would have signed off on the color timing of these releases, right? But say, for example, she didn't, and say that they're not meant to have that yellow tint. At the end of the day, it's about watching the films, and just, I don't know. That really struck me, what Martin Scorsese said, and just to have this set, it's just incredible. To have anyone's entire filmography in a box set is incredible. And so I just, I'm a bit annoyed that people are getting so down on this set, because there's so much that's great about it. That I've only just discovered from the first disc. Now, I do think that the first disc is kind of designed in a way to front load a lot of the new special features, which is a very smart move. And I will say this, just from this first disc, bold statement, and I said in my kind of Blu-ray update video about this box set, I said that at a glance, this is already one of my favorite home video releases of all time. I'll say from the first disc, I am almost satisfied. Like, I could almost put this set on the shelf now, leave the other 14 discs, and feel satisfied in the money that I paid for. We're talking like $175, right? The book's incredible, the special features and everything. I love the packaging. Maybe not so much the way the discs are held, but that's fine. It hasn't presented much of a problem so far. But I love the artwork and the layout and everything. And I'm even digging the way that the programs have been laid out too, even if some of them could have been a bit more smartly arranged in terms of disk space. But it's such a gift. Yeah, it's such a gift to have, especially a filmmaker as wild and varied in their output as Agnès, this renegade filmmaker and artist, and all this huge body of work presented in this one package. It's just incredible, And so, as Scorsese was saying, like, at the end of the day, watch the films, and at the very end of his talk, he said that, yes, celluloid is great, but that was last century, that's what we did, in the previous century. And then there's almost like a look of like sadness on his face as he realizes that the days of film being like the standard are now gone. And, you know, and I do think that film looks better than digital, and I lament the loss of film too in that sense. But at the same time, it's more cost effective. I mean, there's a whole, I'm not going to go into the whole film versus digital thing, but ultimately I agree with him that the most important thing is watching the films, you know, and that speaks perfectly to home video and how that is able to preserve and present to us. And it goes to something that she says in her film, her final film, Varda by Agnès, that for her, the process of making films is a three-part process, and that is the inspiration, the creation, and the sharing. And so, you know, Agnès's whole lifetime of being inspired and creating things, you know, has led to her sharing a huge body of work. And then now that she's gone, this box set is now the final act of the sharing of everything. And so it's huge. It's a hugely important set, and I think that the problems with the transfers and some of the yellow tinting are you're losing sight of the bigger picture here. I think, and again, I'm a purist. I wish it wasn't that way, and I haven't watched the films and seen for myself that, oh wow, yeah, this looks terrible. But maybe they do look like dog shit. But I would hope that I'm still able to watch and enjoy those films because it's the best possible quality. You'll be able to get them anywhere, anyway. So, so back to the Telluride Film Festival panel. The final section is from Tom Luddy, who is quite old, and so he's kind of like, he takes his time to get going, but he really tells a good story about making Uncle Yanko with Agnès, and it's a brilliant story about how he met her in California, and he's like, oh, maybe you know this guy that I know who's also called Varda, but then he's Greek, so maybe there's no connection. She's like, I'm Greek, right? So they went to meet this guy who was apparently a relation of hers, and they went and met him on this boat that he lived on, and then Agnès was like, I want to make this into a film. And Tom Luddy was like, well, okay. And she's like, can you help me to make it? He's like, yeah, sure. And she's like, okay, let's do it tomorrow. And he's like, whoa. He's like, well, maybe we need like a month or two to prepare this. She's like, no, get me a film crew. I need a camera, 35mm film. The processing costs $10,000 I'll need. Get some assistants. And it was like, holy shit. And he thought like, there's no way it can be done. But then he pulled it off. And then he said, that's when you realize that sometimes you really can just do it, And so the next day they went back, they asked him to do the film, and then the next day they shot it and shot for a couple of days or something. So he talks about the spontaneity of the way that she worked and how exciting it was to work with her at that period. And he did another short film with her, Black Panthers. So I really liked his section of the talk. It's a really great 40-minute discussion with a variety of viewpoints, and the Scorsese stuff is really, really good. The two video essays, the one that focuses on the credit sequences, was really good. I enjoyed that, and it shows you the different styles of credits that she would do in terms of both the text, in terms of sometimes it would be hand-drawn and has that kind of that homemade quality to it, but also just the way she plays with color and black and white, and even in her final, well, not final, but penultimate film, Faces Places, the animation, and also just the credits thanking all the backers for the film Faces Places, which I think was mentioned in the video essay that it's the first film that's nominated for an Oscar that has people who backed the film being credited in the credits. Although you could technically say that Return of the King has that in terms of the fan club credits, but that's the extended cut of Return of the King that didn't come out till 2004, so forget I just said that. Anyway, so it was a nice little video essay about her unique credit sequences. She always changed it up and did something different with them, and it's a good insight into that. One thing I thought about this particular special feature was that the footage used for the opening credits is very low quality. And I just think okay, the guy who obviously made it in 2019 didn't have all the high definition masters to work with when making the video essay. But for me personally, if I was working at Criterion, I'd be like, hell, give me the discs, let me rip them, get all the footage in good quality, and I'll re-edit. Because I just think that some of the imagery looks so great in the restored form, and when you watch it on Blu-ray and it just looks kind of ropey quality, I don't know, it feels like the message doesn't get lost, but it's it's diluted a little bit by the lower quality. But that's just a very minor nitpick for me personally, because I'm always kind of obsessed about quality. And then the video essay about it's not really about, it's just showing you shots of various body parts that she photographed in her films, and so it's kind of like split screen. and you got like varieties of color and black and white and hands and then eyes and all sorts of different body parts, and it's like a 2-minute thing. It's okay, you know, it's nice that it was included for sure. And then the 2 trailers. So the trailer for Varda by Agnès, which is kind of nice because I remember that trailer from seeing it last summer and thinking, holy shit, she made one last film. This is incredible. And then the Janus Films retrospective, which had a trailer too, which is like a compilation of like all of her films and stuff, or all of the films that were featured in that retrospective. So that was like a nice way to round it off. And then I will say that in the booklet, or the book, it's a thick motherfucker, we get program notes from Michael Korsky. So he does notes on all 15 programs. So, and I should say actually, so as I move through this, I should talk about the booklet more. There's also an introduction from Amy Torbin. And this was adapted from a piece that she wrote, I think, the year before. So there's like a little section where she talks about how Agnès is no longer around. So they changed it just a little bit so that it feels more like a more current piece, I suppose. And it has the huge font, which is kind of funny. They're trying to fill out the pages, I guess, but I don't mind. There's just some beautiful photographs in here, both of Agnès and, you know, photographs that she took. And this is a really good down-to-earth introduction to Agnès's films and and her works. It's kind of the Roger Ebert kind of school of film writing, where it's just it isn't overly complicated, or I don't like to use the word pretentious because I don't feel like, well, I don't know, maybe it is appropriate in some settings, but some film writers I just don't jive with it. I don't gel with the overly, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me, which is, it's not to say it's bad or anything, it's just I'm not as educated, so I don't get a lot of it, that's just the way I am, I guess. But this is a much more, easily understandable kind of introduction to her work, and it's a really, really nice introduction that I really, really enjoyed. Yes, it first appeared in Art Forum in 2019, and Amy Torbin is a contributing editor at Art Forum, Film Comment, and Sight and Sound. So it's a really good introduction, and then from there we move to the program notes by Michael Korsky. We also have like quotes from Agnès throughout this book, written across the bottom of the page at times, in kind of it's like almost like a font of her kind of her handwriting. And then so then we got the introduction to Agnès Forever, which is a really good little read. Not doesn't drag too long or anything, just nicely sums up kind of certain things, and really good. So that was disc 1 in terms of the supplementary material. There's one thing that I really wish they had included, and now that I've sourced that piece, I'm flabbergasted that they didn't include it, and I'll talk about that in the next part, in which I'll be talking about the first of the 2 films that appears on the first disc, which is the short film that she made in 2015, The 3 Buttons. As for that, a fantastic disc. I think it's going to be really hard for any other disc in this set to top the special features presented here, and I do feel like, again, they front-loaded the first disc with a lot of the best kind of stuff, but also because it feels very retrospective and looking back on her legacy, which is appropriate for, Agnès Forever, and featuring her final film, which is all about looking back at her legacy, so it fits. So I'll be intrigued to see what other kind of special features are peppered in there. I know that the only other brand spanking new feature is on the Jane B disc and program, where they've done a new interview with the actress Jane Birkin, which I'm really looking forward to, actually. And there's one thing in the Rosalie Varda and Mathieu Demy interview, the new one on this disc, where he's talking about when he did Kung Fu Master, which to me is like a film I enjoyed, but it's really icky in terms of the fact that he's like a 14-year-old kid and has a sexual relationship with a woman who's, 39, 40. And he talks a little bit about it, but he doesn't really get into it. And I was like, I'd love to hear like his full thoughts on everything. It would be so intriguing from now an adult perspective, how he feels about that. I just feel like there could be so much that he could talk about, and maybe they could have had a separate interview with him talking about that film on the disc for Kung Fu Master. But anyway, it is what it is, and because some of the stuff in this is so good, it's only natural that I'd want more of it, But there is one thing that they omitted that I think just really could have rounded off this disc and made it like a perfect selection of supplementary material. I'll leave that one in for free, you guessed it. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for watching this third part of Agnès Forever. Yes, I really did make a video this long just about the special features, but I didn't want to just lump it all in because now that I've recorded everything, I see that it would be like a video over an hour long just talking about the first disc. So I wanted to give the extras their own video and each film its own video as well. So I hope you enjoy. I'm going as in-depth as this as I can and as I feel like. I feel like this is very niche and not many people will watch it, but I'm enjoying charting my progress through this incredible box set. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's all right, just that memories are going, lots of memories are gone, she said. But it's all right. I think of them as butterflies flying away. And it makes me lighter. That's amazing. That's her.